friends. Welcome to the Creative Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Caldwell, and I'm so happy you're here. Each episode, I take some time to chat with fellow artists about life, faith, and the impact of the arts.
One of the things that the Holy Spirit taught me, or is still teaching me, but one of the major things that he taught me over the last couple of years is that diminishing your loss is not going to help you move through it. And so I think the first step is acknowledging that you did lose something.
Thank you so much for joining me for episode 39. Today, I'm joined by my beautiful friend, Hannah Anderson. Hannah is a wife, a mom of 2 creative and expressive kids, and a dance artist. Her love for God is evident in our conversation, and you can see how it's an integral part of her life as an artist. We cover a variety of topics in our conversation, such as grief, holistic health, and the power of dance and worship. Hannah began her dance journey at Dramatic Truth School of the Arts in Kansas City. After graduating from their ballet and modern program at 16 years old, she discovered the beautiful Jose Limón technique. That season was pivotal for her as a dancer, and we talk about what that was like in our conversation today. Hannah danced as a company member for Dramatic Truth, Storling Dance Theatre, Ad Deum, and then helped to found Open Sky Arts Collective, which now has 2 locations and is directed by Jeanna Vance. Jeanna will be the guest on an upcoming episode in March, so be sure to stay tuned. Hannah is passionate about wellness from both the perspective of a dancer and the perspective of a mom. One of the most impactful parts of our conversation for me personally was diving into the topic of grief. Hannah shares so much wisdom, and we talk about what it looks like to work through grief in a way that leads to emotional wellness. Currently, Hannah oversees dance for her church in North Carolina, where she serves with the musicians and vocalists to lead worship on Sunday mornings. Get ready to be encouraged and inspired, and enjoy my conversation with Hannah Anderson. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today, Hannah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Big honor.
I'm seriously so pumped because I feel like you're one of those people that I would just love to sit down and talk with on a regular basis. And I finally get the opportunity. So I'm yay. So fun.
Oh, well, thank you. That's really sweet of you.
Yeah. So I think I first remember meeting you probably through Project Dance.
Mm-hmm.
So fun. And it's really been cool seeing a bit of your journey, from a distance for a while now. And so I'm excited to hear more about that and just kind of what you're up to currently. So yeah, do you want to share a little bit about who you are and what you're up to right now?
Sure. Yeah. My name's Hannah, as you said. And I am married to a soldier in the Army. So we're a military family.
Yeah.
And I have 2 kids, a 7-year-old named Marcus and a 2-year-old named Jojo. And they are both very expressive and creative children. They are super, super fun. And I really I feel like found my stride a little bit more in motherhood the last couple of years, which has been just really awesome. I am not dancing as much currently as I had the previous couple of years before I moved to North Carolina, which is where we are now. But that has actually provided some opportunity for me to kind of dive into some other just aspects of my life, and that includes motherhood. So that's been really a gift from the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited to talk more about motherhood and kind of just the journey that you've been on, especially the past couple of years. So yeah, maybe let's go way back to how did you first get into the dance world?
So I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, and my mom was an administrator for a dance school called Dramatic Truth. And that is how I started dancing. I have 5 siblings and all of us took dance. So there were 6 Yorks, which is my maiden name. There were 6 of us that took dance at Dramatic Truth.
That's so incredible. I love that.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. And 3 of us actually still dance in some capacity. I don't know if you know my brother, Seth.
For sure. Yeah, I definitely know Seth.
Yeah. So he dances in Dallas.
And then who's the other sibling that still dances?
Her name is Sarah. And
okay.
She is a physical therapist and Pilates instructor in Kansas City still.
Oh, okay, cool.
So she just does, she's still a beautiful dancer, but she does projects here and there, but mostly works as a physical therapist.
Cool.
Yeah. So we all grew up in Kansas City dancing, and it just was a big part of my life since I was really little.
That's so awesome. And funny story about Seth. So, because so for those that are listening, a few years back, Hannah and Seth came to set a piece on my dance team students. And so he was there helping, set the piece and everything. And from then on, they were like in love with Seth. So yeah. I mean, everyone just falls in love with him that meets him.
I know. It's his lot in life.
Yes.
To teach teenage dancers who have huge crushes.
Exactly. And then they came back. So Ad Deum came back, I think the next year, and did like a community sort of outreach performance at the school. And he was part of that.
Oh, and he was in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so some of the girls were like, Seth. And so then Randall Flynn, he kept kind of like joking with him about it. Like, Seth.
Oh my gosh, poor Seth. I know. It's a blessing and a curse.
Exactly. So. But so awesome. And it was really fun. I think that first piece that I saw you dance in at Project Dance was a duet with Seth, actually.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That would have been, I probably was dancing with Open Sky at that time.
Okay.
Then. He and I did a duet. We started doing duets when he was probably like 15.
Okay.
So,
cool.
But the first time I came to Project Dance, Seth was probably 12.
Oh,
he was tiny.
Yeah. So fun. Yeah. So what was your journey like? So you started there at Dramatic Truth and then moving into more like professional dance.
So Dramatic Truth has a trainee company that I was a part of. And then I danced with their company. And then I moved to Tennessee for a period of time. And I actually studied with the Limón company, which was doing a residency at Vanderbilt University. Yeah, it was super awesome. And I got connected to them through Aaron Chen, who I don't know if you know Aaron.
Yes.
But he's amazing. One of my dear friends.
Knew him through Bellhaven.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So Aaron came to Dramatic Truth, taught at an intensive. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like, what is this style of modern you're doing? And he was like, oh, it's Limón influenced. So then I was like, I have to do this.
Yes.
And then it turned out that Limón was at Vanderbilt in Tennessee. And so I actually had the amazing time I stayed with Aaron and his wife, Abigail, and, took classes with the Limón company.
Right.
For quite a while. I think it was maybe 3 or 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that was, I would say, really a transitional time for me as a dancer.
Mm-hmm.
I learned so many things during that period of time that I think are strengths of mine now. It's really interesting, but there were things that I struggled with as a student. So yeah, it's really interesting. So, texture and being able to release and feel kind of like the flow of movement now is like really one of the things that I love about movement.
Mm-hmm.
But it was something that was difficult for me as a student, mostly because I carried so much tension.
Yeah.
So studying Limón actually just totally changed my experience as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved back to Kansas City, danced with Storling Dance Theatre, which is directed by Mona Enna. I don't know if you've ever met Mona.
I'm not sure if we've ever met, but I definitely know of the company. And
yeah, Shannon is there now.
Yeah, Shannon Benton.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, Storling, and then I guested with Ad Deum. And then at that point, Jeanna and I founded Open Sky.
So cool. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. So kind of thinking back on your professional dance, I mean, you're still dancing some too, but like your professional dance years there, what were some of maybe the biggest like highlights or challenges that you faced during that season?
I would say as far as highlights, I was able to participate in a piece that Diane McIntyre set in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that was in 2016. And I was one of 4 female core dancers. And then there were 4 male core dancers. And then there were 3 soloists. And I just looked up to the soloists so much. Alicia McGrath-Mack was one of them.
Oh, yeah.
And then Curvin and Antonio Boyd from Ailey. They had all just retired from Ailey and they were back in St. Louis. And so they were the soloists.
Wow.
And it was just like so amazing to be in the studio with them and just watch them work. And yeah, it was amazing. And they're amazing people too, especially connected with Alicia. And she just is such a humble, down to earth person.
Yes.
That I think that was like a big connection point to me. That was like, oh, I'm not like so different than her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in terms of like ability,
Right.
I would say, yeah, like we're totally
Yeah, she's
different.
like on a whole nother level.
Yeah, she is. She's on a totally different level. But in terms of like, I'm like, oh, I can actually dance on the same stage with her.
Right.
And she's like a normal person.
Mm-hmm. Like sometimes it's easy to feel like people are,
yes,
I don't
you're
know.
Like they're aliens. Like, I don't know, like you think they're like other than like these beings. You're like, there's no way I could ever, but then it's like, oh my gosh, she's like a normal person. She's a mom. She's just a woman going through life and like doing her best in her career. And, she's an artist. And that was really impacting for me.
Yeah, that's so cool. And kind of being able to connect on those similarities as well. And like, hey, we're kind of in a similar life experience right now.
Yeah, she had young kids, which was, similar.
Yeah, that's so cool. And yeah, she's beautiful. I remember she taught at an Ad Deum intensive. I think it was a Horton class.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
So good. Oh man. So
she's ridiculous.
Yes. So crazy. And I don't know. I love Horton. Even it's kind of a love-hate relationship because it's very it's so challenging, but it's so good. It makes you so strong. Yeah.
Horton is extremely hard for me.
Oh man. Yeah. It's just rough, but it's great.
Yeah. Oh, it's so beautiful.
And it produces such powerful dancers. Yeah, for sure. But that also thinking about like your experience with Limón, I'm kind of going backwards a little bit, but Limón is one of my like favorite dance techniques. And just, I love the freedom in it and kind of the, like you said, the release quality and so good.
It's a beautiful style because of the subtlety in it, I think. Yeah, there's just so many nuances, that kind of make it what it is. I love that about it.
For sure. And that reminds me of Jarrell Comedy and his piece, Joyful Noise. So good.
Jarrell.
I'm sure all of his stuff is great.
Oh yeah. He's amazing. Yeah. He's one of my dear friends too.
Yeah. Love so Jarrell. Good. I had him on the podcast early on, and that was really cool to get to just connect and kind of hear more about his story. And but that's one of the most like musical pieces, like the musicality and just
he's a genius.
Yeah. So cool. When you can like see the music out before you. So cool. Anyway, side notes on like, we're getting a little bit dance nerdy. That's okay.
Sorry, everyone.
All good. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about when you started Open Sky with Jeanna Vance and what was that journey like, kind of setting up and starting a company?
So when we started Open Sky, I don't even know if we referred to it as a company.
Oh yeah.
Because our vision for it was, so it actually, the first time we talked about it, if I remember correctly, we had so many conversations, but one of our first conversations was actually at Project Dance Houston.
Okay.
I don't know if you were there the year that it rained.
Yes. And we all were like,
patio.
Yeah.
Yeah. We actually had the opportunity to talk to this wonderful woman. I can't remember what her name was. Jenna would probably remember, but she actually was homeless and had been coming through the area, like walked through that area regularly.
Oh, yeah.
And she said that she was really surprised that the dancers had stayed to dance, even though it was raining. And that conversation was really impacting because out of that, we started talking about the separation between professional dance and the public, or just people who don't have the option of going into a theater and seeing beautiful art, or, life-changing art, things that really can impact you as a person. And some people just don't have that opportunity. And so that kind of spurred this discussion and eventually action to start taking dance and other art forms to people who did not have access to it, and just bringing the kingdom and the presence of God to those people through our art form.
Wow. Yeah. That's such a cool vision for it to start from. And then kind of how did it develop and transform?
So it's gone through quite a few transitions. I stepped down from leadership actually about 1.5 years ago.
Okay.
And since that time, Jenna moved to Dallas. And so there's actually now 2 different companies, which is really awesome.
That is so
one
awesome.
In Houston, one in Dallas. Yeah. And they have, I think, really similar visions still. So, but I couldn't speak to exactly what's going on right now, obviously, since I haven't been involved in a little bit.
We're hopefully going to be talking to Jenna soon too, so she can speak more.
I was wondering if you had her on the show already.
Not yet, but about to, I think.
Oh, she's so fun to talk to. She's a great speaker. Anyway, but during the time that I was involved in leadership, a lot of what we did was project-based. So we would actually have dancers come in for a short amount of time to a particular location. We would set all the choreography, and then we would do a bunch of different venues through that same week. So we would have maybe like 9 shows over like a 3-day period.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah.
And we would go to schools, we would go to nursing homes, we'd go to parks, we went to so many different types of places. And the Lord really showed up every time.
Yeah.
It was really, really an amazing experience.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any favorite memories?
Actually, the one that comes to mind is, I think this was maybe our second project.
Mm-hmm.
We were in Houston, and we were at a special needs school, I think is what it was. And the floor was like kind of sticky.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I don't think it was actually even like tile. It was like something soft.
Okay.
And kind of like a rubber mat or something. Anyway, I ended up dislocating my toe.
Oh no.
Dislocating my pinky toe. And I didn't really like realize it because we were just dancing, and then it was like we would pack up, and then we would spend time with the kids, and then we would like jump in the car, grab food, and go to our next venue. And so I was dancing in tennis shoes for that next show because we were doing a park.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I took my shoe off at Jenna's house that night, we had been dancing all day, and I just like didn't even think about the fact that my foot was hurting.
Oh my goodness.
I took my shoe off, and my toe was so swollen and black, like purple black. Like it was horrible.
Whoa.
We were like, oh, there's something going on here. So anyway, that's just a funny, like, I don't know, when you're doing stuff that's unconventional, I feel like sometimes you just run into funny little things like that.
Exactly.
And my toe ended up being fine, but
that's good. I'm glad it was okay in the end.
Yeah. I think it went back in actually that night or something.
That's
Popped
good.
it back in or something.
And that's pretty amazing that you were just like, I didn't even really notice.
Well, yeah, I have a tendency to just really like zone in under pressure, or,
mm-hmm.
when that adrenaline is going, and it's like we had all of these things that we had to do that day. And I just didn't even, I don't think about my well-being, which is a strength and it's also a weakness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's hard for me to focus on my own well-being when I have a lot going on. So
Gotcha.
Yeah. Something I'm still working on.
Yeah. It's so hard, I think, as dancers in a lot of ways. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. And maybe we'll actually jump to that, just talking about looking at taking care of yourself as a dancer, just as a person, as a mom,
Mm-hmm.
I know you talked a little bit about having been on a journey of looking at like health holistically. And
yes.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about kind of your journey in that and what you've been finding. What are some of the things that you've been discovering?
Yeah, I'd love to. So about a year after my son Marcus was born, I started looking into the idea of like non-toxic home. So that's essentially when you start to look at conventional products that are sold in stores, start to realize that there are a lot of ingredients that are permitted in American products that are really not beneficial to the body. And some of them are actually pretty damaging to the body.
Mm-hmm.
So our standards here in the States are actually the least stringent in the world.
Wow,
if you look at like European standards, they're very different than what we require, here in the States. So we allow a lot of different things to be put in our products that have known effects on the body that are negative, and I believe are contributing to a lot of the disease that we face.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I kind of started looking into that at that point. And then as I started that journey of like switching things out of my house that were not beneficial to my family's health, I started using essential oils and I started using non-toxic products. And then that is when I started a business with Young Living, actually.
Yeah.
And that has been another big part of that, I guess, section of my life, is just how that community has brought a sense of belonging and vision, like in that area of my life as well, which is really cool. And just inspired me to continue to look at health as, from a more holistic approach, like you were saying. So we also are really passionate about keeping good food in our home. Mm-hmm. So we've tried, like my husband and I have tried, we're kind of both like nerds.
Uh-huh.
And so we're like, get really into the weeds on stuff.
Yes.
And honestly, like, okay, I think this is unusual. Most of the time, I feel like women are the ones that are maybe the driving force in the home for it to be healthier.
Mm-hmm.
But what's so funny is I remember like when my husband and I first got married and we were just like living on like Chinese takeout, basically, you know, like we had like, or I mean, honestly, when I was a teenager, I remember telling my husband that before we got married, that I would live on those Sonic cherry limeades, like in the summer. Like I'd eat like no food during the day. I would just drink Dr. Pepper and cherry limeade.
Wow.
And I have no idea, like, how did my body, I don't know how my body functioned. Yeah, dancing like 7 hours a day. Like, I don't know. It was crazy. Probably contributed to pain and inflammation and all kinds of stuff I was dealing with. But anyway, so that was totally not on my radar when we got married or even in my early adult life. But he kind of started to get into, you know, looking into food as medicine. And I was looking into non-toxic home. And so those two things combined, really has transformed just our home life. And now it's just totally normal. And we don't do it perfectly at all. I mean, like I'd say it's about like 80-20.
Yeah.
We try to bring food into our house that is like whole foods. You know, we eat very, very little processed food in our home. But then if we go out to eat, we're like, we're going to go out to eat. We're not going to be like, you know, like I'm going to have cheesecake. Like, you know? So it's definitely, I feel like an approach. I don't really love the word balanced, but I feel like we try to have a balanced approach to it. So, and then also just spending a lot of time outside, letting our kids explore and climb and run and use their bodies. And so
staying active and all of that. Yeah. That's so good. Yeah. It's definitely, I think, a lifelong kind of journey for that kind of thing. And have you found, whether it's with keeping the home environment, you know, toxin free and healthy, or even the kind of nutrition side of it, have you found any things that are really just helpful, like tips, I guess, for other people that might be listening that want to go more in that direction, you know?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there's a lot of different perspectives, I think, on nutrition. And I personally believe that's because we all have different, you know, our bodies are different and we have different biochemical needs. And so that's, I think, part of what plays into different diets working really well for different people.
Right.
One thing that's been really groundbreaking for me that actually ties in both nutrition and non-toxic home is hormones and being really aware, especially for women and also for men. Actually, men's hormones are just equally as important, but in terms of like your reproductive hormones, you know, and how that connects to your cycle and everything, that has blown my mind just in the last couple of years. Like knowing what's going on in your body hormonally can change everything with your day-to-day life in knowing how to take care of yourself, how much rest you need, what types of food you should be eating, when you need more vitamin B. I mean, there's like all kinds of, as you dive into that, you're like, and some of it actually your body will crave, you know, you might crave fermented foods at a certain time of the month or whatever. But yeah, I'd be happy to, if anybody has questions about that, I love diving into that stuff. So anyone can feel free to reach out to me if they have questions about that.
Yes, that would be great.
That's been really life-changing for me.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a whole depth of knowledge there that I'm like, I don't even know about, but it'd be good to get more into, you know?
Oh yeah, there's so much information. I mean, I'm sure I've just barely scratched the surface, honestly. But. And
it's so cool seeing just how intricate our bodies have been designed intricately.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah. And just,
it is crazy.
And how like a lot of times, you know, we see things in the Bible even, and then like science proves it years later, you know, and just kind of the cool, just knowing that God designed it for a purpose.
Yeah. Scripture definitely ties into health and how to take care of our bodies. And
for sure. And now I use Young Living as well. So I'm just curious, what is your favorite Young Living oil?
That is a great question.
It's such a hard one though. Or you could say more than one. You could do more than one.
I would say the one that has been the most consistently my favorite for the last several years is Present Time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which is really, people oftentimes use it during transition. And since we have had so much transition in the last couple of years, I think that's probably why it's been such a support for me.
Yeah.
But I love that one. And I love frankincense, I'd say, are my
Me too.
Can't go wrong with Frank.
Yeah, frankincense is so good. I think one that I've recently discovered was acceptance, which actually is really great.
Oh my gosh.
And this year especially, it was so funny. I actually got it for the first time right around the time like we were going back into school in person. And it's kind of like, okay, this is just sort of everything's changing all the time, and just kind of having that, you know, attitude and mindset of acceptance of whatever comes. And so that was a good one. And yeah, it's been kind of one that we have a couple diffusers actually in our dance room. So we've been using that.
Oh, that is awesome. Yeah. That is so great.
Which is really cool.
It's fantastic.
It's so good. And then of course, Thieves is kind of like home base. I feel like it's like, for everything.
It is. It is definitely home base.
So I love Thieves.
It is awesome.
Kind of going back to just wellness. How have you seen that impact your life as a dancer specifically, and kind of looking back on your dance journey? Any like insights or nuggets of wisdom that you have for dancers out there?
Yeah, I would say one of the big things is that when I do have an injury, or when I feel an injury maybe coming on, that I have tools to use, which has been huge. I feel like when I was training, and even early on when I was dancing professionally, it wasn't that nobody around me knew what to do. It, you know, like there was definitely like ice it or rest it or whatever, things like that. But like increasing your water intake, reducing or cutting out sugar, you know, things like that have been, you know, in the nutrition side, just those two simple things when you're trying to recover from an injury make such a huge difference.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and then also like having access to oils that are anti-inflammatory and that help regenerate cells and things like that. Like when you know what oil to use to support, you know, the process that your body is going through, it just makes a world of difference.
Yeah.
So I'd say both of those have been really influential, you know, from really impacting in the last couple of years. And then another thing actually in terms of wellness and movement is, so I told you my sister is a Pilates instructor.
Oh yeah.
And a physical therapist. And she has been like a lifesaver. In fact, I just injured my back about a week and a half ago.
Oh no.
Because we have worship rehearsal on Tuesday nights at my church. And we were just like, we're just going to go for it. And it was amazing. But it reminded me actually of the Project Dance Friday night lives.
Yes.
You know? Like
we just
go crazy.
Dance, yes.
Go totally crazy. And so I was doing that and it was amazing. But I hurt my back because it was on concrete and I'm like jumping around and like throwing my head all over the place and being a total nut. And and so anyway, ended up with some pretty intense back pain. But all that to say, I FaceTime my trusty sister and like, help me, what do I do? And so she was able to like be like, okay, you need to be doing these exercises because that takes pressure off of the disc, which is, you know, what's experiencing the pain, blah, blah, blah. And just having somebody in your corner who actually understands the body. And because I do know, you know, a fair amount about the body, but I couldn't have given myself known exactly what exercises to do to work on my core strength while taking pressure off the injury, while increasing mobility in an area that I need to, you know, like that type of stuff. So I would really encourage people to get some Pilates in your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
And finding people that have that more specific knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah. That expertise. Yeah. It's really important. I think sometimes as dancers, we're like, oh, well, I'm sure it'll be fine. And like, I'll just rest it or ice it or push through or whatever. And it's like, well, actually, you need a little help.
That's not the best. I know we probably lean into that pushing through way too much in the dance world.
Yes.
Like the show must go on, that whole idea.
Oh my gosh, that mentality. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like as you get older, your body just can't take it as much.
Right.
You know, like I was saying, when I was 19, I'm living off Dr. Pepper.
Right.
And dancing 7 hours a day.
Like how does that work?
Now, if I tried to do that, it would go downhill really fast.
Right. Yeah. It's good. I think like with age kind of learning what we really need. And then, so younger dancers out there, like really try to take some of this now, because that'll just help your longevity for sure. So
yeah, it's so hard when you're younger. I feel like, which this probably makes me sound annoying maybe to younger people. I don't know. But I'm like, when you're young, it's so hard. But truly, for me, it's been out of necessity that I've changed my habits, you know? It's not because I was proactive and like, oh, well, you know, what about this? You know, I wasn't thinking about longevity. I've just had to alter my lifestyle because of changes, you know, that have had circumstances. So
right. That makes sense for sure. I just wanted to take a brief moment to pause for my conversation with Hannah and share with you about our Patreon community. If you're enjoying the podcast and want to support the show, our Patreon community is the place for you. As a patron, you can choose a monthly support amount and in return get access to extra content that's only available for patrons. We post new content every month, whether that's extended conversations with our guests, a behind-the-scenes look at what goes into creating the podcast, or just the ability to connect with other listeners and me. I would love to have your support and to have you as a patron. You can learn more at creativeimpactpodcast.com/Patreon. That's creativeimpactpodcast.com/Patreon. Now let's get back to my conversation with Hannah. And then kind of similar question, but from the perspective of being a mom, you know, and for a lot of moms, they probably feel like, how do I make the time to take care of myself, you know, because you're kind of just on the go. Any thoughts on that?
Man, I am in that group of people who have a hard time finding time for themselves. And I have found just even recently, this is actually something that came up when I was in a couple of therapy sessions that I was in last year.
Yeah.
I have an amazing therapist in Kansas City. She's the best. But she and I, this came up when I was talking to her last year. It was like, why is it so hard for me to prioritize taking care of myself over taking care of other people? And, you know, I think one of the answers that's probably accurate for some people is that it's like, oh, well, you're devaluing your own needs because you're trying to take care of other people. And it's a very common thing for women to do, especially in our culture, which I think is totally accurate. But for me, I think some of it actually is like, comes from, this is going to be hard to explain, but like from a root of almost like self-pity. Like I'm a victim to my life. And like, this is just,
I just have to deal with it kind of.
Yes, exactly. Like I just have to, like, this is just how it is. And like, I don't really live my life that way. You know, I don't think very many people who know me would be like, oh yeah, Hannah's like super victim-y, you know?
Right.
But that is something that I actually struggle with when I get really down, like really dig really deep, is like, oh, people don't understand how hard my life is. And like, you know, being a mom, being a military mom, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, you can, you can go there and think of as many, that you can make a long list of things that's wrong with your life, you know? And I think when I engage that at all, interestingly, the thing that drops first is my self-care, my awareness, because I'm just like, well, whatever, just like throw my hands up in the air. And I'm like, I'm not going to take my supplements. I'm not going to stretch. I'm not going to blah, 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 you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Yes, it does. I'm like kind of self-evaluating. Am I doing this?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe other people struggle with that root issue also, but I have found that to be true for me.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. That's a good thing to kind of just think through. And it may not be, like you said, it may not be the same motivation for some of us, but like what taking the time to try to get down to the root of what is actually motivating that lack of action, maybe, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Is probably really good for all of us to stop and think about. And I think I stay busy a lot and don't take the time to do that. So it's really good. And that kind of leads to really just like emotional wellness and sort of like emotional, spiritual, like mental health. This past year, I don't know if you know this, my sister actually passed away in January.
I did not know that. Yeah. In 2021?
Yeah. So it's been very recent. Yeah. I know.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. It's been kind of crazy. So she wasn't really planning to go here, but we'll just go here. So
okay, yeah.
Yeah, she came down with COVID in, let's see, when was that? Well, we actually don't know exactly when it started because she had a couple of negative tests. You know, she had symptoms, but they thought maybe it was, I don't know, bronchitis or something else. And then ended up in the ER, took another COVID test, and it was COVID. So she probably was sick for a good almost a month, maybe, before she actually went into the hospital. And then she was about a week in, put on the ventilator, and then was on a ventilator for like 5 weeks or something like that. And then her heart gave out. And so,
oh my God.
Yeah, it's just been, I know I just saw that you mentioned grief. So I was like, that's definitely the place that I'm in right now. And kind of that still like a bit of denial / like, you know, going through the grieving process and, you know, is this really real life? And, you know, finding those moments of, I think what I tended to do, because I kind of got right back into work pretty quickly after, it was like, took a week off, but it was busy.
A week.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
It's nothing. I know. And we were also getting ready for the memorial service, and I was helping with like photos and, you know, so I never really like stopped, if that makes sense. And trying to figure out, okay, how can I create space to like process this, you know? Anyway, so would love to chat with you about like that. That's like a whole nother element of like loss and grief, but just in general, you know, how can we move towards that emotional wellness, you know, whether it's loss or maybe something else for other people. But any thoughts on that? Yeah.
Well, I'm so heartbroken that happened.
Thank you.
So sorry. I would say, it's interesting that we're talking about this because grief has been a really big part of my journey the last couple of years. And I'm having a hard time even like comparing it to what you're going through. Like I'm like, which you shouldn't, which is not actually, that's not healthy actually, even to do that, to compare my experience with
every
yours.
Experience is unique, you know, I think.
Yes.
And I think everyone, regardless of how small it is, I think everyone this year has experienced a lot of loss, whether it's a person or it could be, you know, loss of like plans almost, you know, and even though that seems small, quote unquote, like it still is loss, you know?
It is. You're right. You're exactly right. And actually one of the things that, you know, that the Holy Spirit taught me or is still teaching me, but one of the major things that he taught me over the last couple of years is that diminishing your loss is not going to help you move through it. And so I think the first step is acknowledging that you did lose something. And actually one of the kind of guiding lights for me in the last couple of years regarding grief has been cageless birds. I don't know if you're familiar with them, Melissa. Yeah. So Melissa Helser is she's a singer and a songwriter and a leader of a community here actually in North Carolina called the Cageless Birds. And I've never met her personally, but her writing and her speaking on grief has been extremely impacting to me because she actually has a chronic illness that causes a lot of pain. And she's had since she was young, like a 17, I think.
Wow.
Something like that. And so it's been over 20 years that she's been dealing with it. So she talks about the fact that Jesus experienced grief and he experienced the whole range of human emotions. And he still does. He's still a man. And when he walked on the earth, like how she talks about, like, how did he experience such intense loss and betrayal and grief and walk through that in a way where he wasn't sinning? Because a lot of the time, like, we think of like, oh, I'm feeling grief, or I'm feeling disappointment, or I'm feeling discouraged. And that must mean that I'm not like, I'm sinning, or I'm like, I'm somehow disconnecting from the Holy Spirit.
Not like spiritual enough or something, or
there's something wrong with me. Like, why can't I stay happy? Like, I'm blessed. I'm, which
too blessed to be stressed or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Too blessed to be stressed. Oh my God. That's
all the good bumper stickers out there. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So we have this kind of strange outlook that if we're experiencing grief, that there's something wrong with us and that we should be able to move through it at a certain, just like breeze on through and be like, you know what, it's okay. God is good. He's in control, blah, blah, blah. And yes, of course, I mean, God's goodness actually is one of the pillars that I think has been established in my life since I have confronted the grief in my life, is that even through painful situations and loss and disappointment and things that you don't understand, even through those things, he stays constant, and his goodness it's irrevocable. It does not change. And that has been a really, like I said, like a pillar that has been, I feel like, drilled into my heart in the last couple of years. And so anyway, so actually back to Melissa, she talks about how in her personal just like walk, she felt like the Holy Spirit told her that Jesus walked through all of those emotions and never pulled away from the Father. And that's how he could walk through all of these different painful experiences and actually feel the ramifications of them. Like if you think about before he's about to, he has 12 people who are his, well, actually there were more than 12, obviously, because we know that Mary was one of his best friends. And, well, so he did have other people in his circle, but so his 12 closest friends, the night before he's about to go do the most painful thing that is possible, he knows that one of his best friends is going to betray him, literally cause the whole thing to like set the whole thing in motion.
Right.
And not only is this person like one of his dear friends, it's someone that he's been discipling.
Yeah. Like pouring his life into. Yeah,
exactly. And so the feelings of, I'm sure that there were feelings of betrayal, obviously, and grief and that separation. And even like, I don't know, this is maybe a little messy to go here. I don't know exactly what Jesus was feeling, but as a leader, when someone that you have led makes decisions that are not, godly decisions, or they're not good for them. Like they're going
it's like
direction that you didn't lead them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Then like that pain, it's like you see them and you feel pain for them, but then you're also like, what could I have done better? Like, is it my fault? Like what, you go back and look at what your interactions with them and like, did I cause this? Did I feed into this? There's just so many different emotions that could have been going on. Yeah. So there's that aspect. And then, at that point he drew in closer to the Father, which we know, when he's in Gethsemane, his 3 best friends fall asleep when he needs them the most.
Right.
It's literally, he is like, please just pray with me. Like I just need you to stay awake and pray with me. And they can't stay awake. And it's like the ultimate failing right there. And he's like, okay, I'm on my own. Like, this is,
wow. Just like
I
isolated.
have no one with me. Yeah, exactly. And, but he pulls into the Father even more, at Gethsemane, and he doesn't pull away. That's another big thing that the Lord's been showing me is like, so this kind of actually goes back to like when you're a military family and there's kind of like this strange aspect of your life that's like, you're only going to be in an area for a certain amount of time.
Like not wanting to, sorry, maybe jumping the gun, but not wanting to attach yourself.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You're like how deep can my roots go here?
Right.
And so something the Lord has been teaching me in the process of grief, just in one area of my life is like, I know that separation is coming, and I have an amazing community here that we love. And I know that that's going to happen, but Jesus, even knowing that he was going to the cross, he leaned in until the last moment with his disciples, like until the very last moment, even though most of them weren't even there when he was crucified.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So
I hadn't really ever looked at it from that perspective before. Yeah.
No, I hadn't either until the Lord brought it up to me. So,
so cool.
I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy.
So, yeah, it's easy. Maybe like a self-protection. We want to like we think it'll be
Oh,
less
yeah.
painful. Because I guess it probably would be in some sense less painful if we were
In the short
not
term.
as deep in the short term. Exactly. But then you
Mhm.
didn't have the richness of the relationships when they were
Exactly.
there.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually heard, it was a different podcast I was listening to, that she said something about, it was about foster care, and that they just started fostering a little baby. And she was like, you know, a lot of people ask, you know, how can you handle, you know, basically losing them eventually.
Yes.
And, you know, how do you not get too close is kind of what people would say. And this really hit me with my sister, actually, because they basically, she was saying, you know, all love ends in loss. Like all love is going to end in loss. And that doesn't mean that you don't love fully when you have that, you know, when that person is there.
Wow.
I was like, well, it really hit me, because I was like, ah. But
Oh, my
same
goodness.
with, yeah, just relationships and friendships. And, you know, even if it's just developing community, you know, that pain is probably worth
oh, it definitely is worth it.
Yeah.
I think that this actually might have been also a Cageless Birds thing. I can't remember exactly, but I remember reading something that was talking about like the depth of pain that you feel is like the height of joy that you can feel. And that if you numb yourself to pain, then you're numbing yourself to joy. Actually, maybe that was Brene Brown.
That might be Brene Brown. I love her stuff too. Yeah.
She's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
definitely
good.
worth it, but it's hard. And I think it also requires some self-awareness, or maybe not self-awareness, but just leaning on the Lord so that he can make you self-aware. Because it's really hard to be self-aware. I feel like
that's so true.
I think I'm self-aware, and then I'm like, wow, there's a lot going on here that I did not know.
All those blind spots that we don't realize are there.
Yes, exactly.
So true. And this ties perfectly into just as artists, how our faith kind of interplays with our artistry and just in life, honestly, like speaking to artists, because that's kind of the gist of the podcast. But but in general, like whoever is listening, you know, how our faith interacts with the rest of our life. And yeah, I'd be just curious to hear kind of your thoughts on that, kind of the interplay of faith and artistry and humanity.
Yeah. Artistry and
That's
humanity.
a really deep question. I know it's kind of like hard because it's so integral to everything.
Is, exactly. Yeah. When you think about arts and dance, it's kind of strange because, you know, like when people like separate their life out and they're like finances, family, you know,
you're like, it's all connected.
Yeah, exactly. And faith, like for me, I'm like, I like to categorize things, but faith, like my relationship with the Holy Spirit is like so intertwined in all those things. That's like how I do those things.
Yes.
So it's not like faith is a separate part of my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I relate to movement through the Holy Spirit. It's just like, it's so intertwined. And even when I'm not like dancing to worship music or, you know, doing like a worship piece or whatever.
Right.
It's still just my love language to him. And he made me to move. And that's how I experience. It's so weird to explain. I mean, I'm sure tons of the people on this listening to the podcast experience the same thing, you know, in their life, but just that it's, you know, it's where I feel alive and able to process difficult things and process great things and just really be myself and who I was created to be, I feel like. So,
yeah. So one of my favorite memories of you, sort of because it was your choreography, was actually the piece Defender.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. So it was, I think, at an Ad Deum intensive that the company performed that piece as part of like the, you know, kind of like a showing and the studio showing type thing. And I had come to that with a friend, and I think it's the most I've just felt and experienced the Holy Spirit while watching a dance, if that makes sense.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was just like so like palpable almost, like in that moment. And still to this day, like that's one of my favorite songs now, just because of that connection to it. And I love how the Holy Spirit can move through dance and through obviously all the different mediums of art and through nature and all of these things.
Yes.
But yeah, through dance as well. It was fangirl moments.
Please. I was going to say, it's interesting that you bring up Defender because that was actually awesome. I was supposed to set Higher Love
Really?
Uh-huh. And I had already set Higher Love the year before, but then Randy wanted me to put it on a different group of dancers. And the night before, I was actually at Jenna's house, and I was like, oh, I really feel like I'm supposed to choreograph this song, Defender, instead of resetting Higher Love. I'm like, but I was like, I don't want to text Randy. I feel like really like dumb texting him the night before, like, hey, can we change the plan? But so I texted him, and he's like, I'll pray about it. So the next morning,
right?
I go in and I'm like, oh, please let me do it. And he was like, okay, I'm totally fine with it as long as you can get it done by, Thursday or whatever. And it just totally flowed out of me. Like, I mean, more than any other piece I think that I've ever made. It was like, it just was in my, a picture in my mind. And then the choreography was able to flow out. And anybody that I've choreographed on knows that I oftentimes will have to try things. Like I'll try something and set a section and then I'll be like, no, it's not working, and then go back and reset it. And I have to have dancers in the studio with me to choreograph.
Yeah.
And this particular song was just like, it was like, it didn't matter. Like I could choreograph, I would go in early and like work on the choreography and it just like flowed out of me. And then it was amazing. And yeah, I feel like the Lord really anointed it, and he moves through it every time I see recordings of it and stuff. So
yes, I would totally second that. So cool and so powerful. And I love those experiences. And so it sounds like you're working with your church now, including dance and worship. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So actually we have a pretty big church that we connected to here in Fayetteville, and I am part of the worship leadership team. So I'm the oversight of the dance team. So it's actually really, really cool the way they have this set up. And this church is like over 20 years old. So I did not set up hardly anything. I just kind of came in. The Lord's timing actually was just, the timing was amazing for when we connected at this church and that this position needed to be filled. But anyway, all of that to say, the way that the worship team is set up, there's basically 3 prongs that are the vocalists, the band, and the dancers. Cool. So we're not really, so we're not separate from the rest of the worship team. It's not like the worship team and the dance team. We actually are the worship team.
Yeah, I love that. I don't know that I've ever heard of a church having that, which is so cool.
It's amazing. I have never heard of a church having it.
Yeah.
At least that I have been a part of.
Right. Yeah, so, there's probably maybe some out there, but
maybe, yeah. Mm-hmm. But I've never encountered one. So that is one thing that's really unique about this church that I so appreciate and love. And so I stepped into that position last May, I think, so almost a year ago. Mm-hmm. And it has been really, really fun and a really big blessing. And one of the things that I love about it is how kind of full circle it is for me. Like I remember being 17 or 18 and watching worship teams and, really engaging in worship, like in my heart when there's like no space to dance, and just thinking like I could lead something. Like I know that there's something in me that could be, that could be as powerful as what's happening right now, like with the music. Like I knew that it needed to be more intertwined. And it wasn't that I was like, I'm the only person that can do it. It was just like, I knew that seed was in me. Mm-hmm. And so it's really cool now to, like 12 or 13 years later, to be in that position and just being able to participate in that. So it's kind of like a fun full circle thing. Because I have a lot of distinct memories of that type of experience, where I just be like, oh, I want this to be more like, I want movement to be part of this. I know it could be. And I just I didn't have the platform, and I didn't have the maturity either. I mean, that would have been a disaster when I was 18, but
God had the right timing there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's like, well, just wait.
That's great.
You wait 10 years or so.
That's awesome. So is dance incorporated on like a pretty weekly basis then?
Yeah, we dance every Sunday.
That's awesome.
And we're actually on both sides of the platform, but one side's a lot smaller. So one side generally has like a flagger. Mm-hmm. And then the other side, we do more. We have generally 3 to 5 dancers on that side. and we'll incorporate, just different improvisational tools, shadowing, cadence, unison,
Yeah.
soloing,
Nice.
all of that stuff.
Do y'all do some like just preset stuff as well? Or is it mostly improvisation type based?
Yeah. So normally I try to have at least one song on Sunday that has at least the chorus choreographed.
Okay.
And then what I do is I map out the songs. So at least 2 of the songs I'll map out. Normally the third one I leave totally open because sometimes they don't even get to the third song because they just go into like prophetic stuff or whatever.
Gotcha. Cool.
Which is super fun. But
yeah.
So I've started mapping out songs where, it's like this person is soloing in this verse and then the chorus happens and the 3 of us are going to do the chorus and then the bridge happens and then we're going to circle flow or whatever. Yeah. So it's kind of, everybody has the format in their minds. Cool. And then it's always subject to change, but that has been really helpful when we've been able to do that just practically. Yeah. Because it kind of gives people a little bit more heads up, what's going to be happening. And the dancers on the dance team, actually, nobody on the dance team is a professional dancer. Okay. They're all, some of them have training, some of them don't. It just depends on the person. But a lot of them have grown up at the church, and movement has been a part of their experience for a long time. So they're really awesome. I love our team.
That's so neat. That is really just unique. I feel like, at least in my experience as well. So that's so cool. I love hearing what people are doing in different places.
I know, it's amazing that it exists. You're like, wait, what? I didn't know this could happen.
Exactly. Well, I'd love to hear, do you have something on your heart that you would want to share with other artists right now?
I think the grief thing is a big one.
That's a big one.
So this is a pretty current journey. I feel like that the Lord's taking me through is that I tend to separate myself from like the in crowd, or like, I don't see myself as like part of the cool club. I'm like, oh, I'm on the outside. Yeah. I feel like I'm on the outside of everything that's going on. And I'm realizing that it's really affected my relationships. And it's not like I'm looking back at all my previous relationships and going like, oh no, like they were all like ruined by this. But it's just like a growing thing, where you're like, okay, wow, this has been a theme of my life for a long time. And it's kind of strange to think about that, because I know there are people who are like, oh, like you're so inspiring. And like, maybe put me on a pedestal of some kind, which is bizarre to me. Cause I'm like, take me down. Like, that's not a good idea. But I do the same thing to people, where I put them on a pedestal and I like separate myself from them. And I'm like, oh, I'm just a normal person. And, that same thing, like nobody understands me. Like I'm an outcast, or I'll never be totally accepted. Like all of those kind of lies. Anyway, I'm finding that as I relate to people, that even once I am accepted into a group, like they'll be kind of like, I'm like, oh, like I have a place, I have a seat at the table, and I can contribute and I can receive. And there'll be like this phase where I feel like I'm functioning in my gifting and have relationship that's, really life-giving. But then even within that group, I'll start to separate myself from members in the group and be like, oh, well, they have this in common and I'm different and I'm an outsider. And then I start to, it doesn't matter like how in the group I am, I feel outside the group.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know like if other people struggle with that or not, but that is something that I'm like, it's really been interesting to notice that in different areas of my life. And I feel like the Lord's, already just shown up. I feel like there's already been like massive breakthrough for me, even just in this past week, because this kind of showed up really specifically. There was like a culmination where I was like, my eyes were just like totally open to this. Because recently I went on like a little girls' weekend with 2 of my close friends here. And
cool.
Yeah, which was so fun. But I was like, why do I feel like I'm excluded, even when I'm at this exclusive gathering? There's only 3 of us, and I feel on the outside. Like I'm
interesting. Yeah.
I'm magnifying my differences and I'm magnifying their similarities, but I shrink my similarities to them, the things that I have in common with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So the way that I guess that this would potentially ring true for dancers is that I think that because of the way the dance world works, I think that that has kind of like ingrained that sense of role or placement within a group of people. And then that's what determines value. So are you a soloist or are you a member of the corps? Are you a company member or are you an apprentice? You audition and you either make it into the company or you don't. And those things, I'm a pretty pragmatic person. So like, to me, I'm like, well, yeah, duh. Like you don't want bad people in your company.
Right.
Of course, you're going to have to like draw a separating line, and that's fine. It's not like there's a problem with that. But I think that the Lord is uprooting that belief system that was cemented in me, that my value is in the role that I play within a community.
Yeah.
And that I don't have to earn my seat at the table. And if I show my weakness, I'm not going to lose my seat. And so all of those things are kind of, I don't know if any of that, if that's going to be helpful to anybody, but that's what I'm currently, I think, seeing in myself and what the Lord's doing in me currently and having to do with my experience in the dance world.
Yeah, I think that will definitely speak to people. And it makes, I think, each of us consider, where am I maybe believing a lie or...
Yeah, that my value is in what I do.
Yes, exactly. So that's super good. I really appreciate it. As we're wrapping up, I really could talk to you for so long. I always like to ask people, just for fun, what is one of your favorite things right now?
Okay, this is one of my favorite things right now, is if you are friends with me on Instagram, you will find videos of me and my son, Marcus, or just him. He is a hoot. And he has recently gotten into oils. I mean, we've been using oils since he's a baby, but he's like all into the like educating about oils now.
Nice.
So he's done he's done a series of educational videos on that. So I think that's probably one of my favorite things right now, is just inviting him into my work and just like seeing his creativity and just really engaging. That has been really fun and brings me a lot of joy. So
yeah, that's super fun and so cute too.
Yeah,
I love it.
He is so cute.
Super fun. Well, if anyone wanted to connect with you or get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
I would say probably Instagram, which is _Hannah_Anderson. And so you can find me there, or if you're interested in non-toxic stuff or essential oils or anything like that, then you can look up at Lavendrops, which is my business account on Instagram.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah. So that's like the beginning of lavender, LAVENDROPS.
Cool.
Lavendrops.
Clever. Super cute.
Oh, yeah, I know. So clever. Yeah.
I love it.
And then I'm also on Facebook. If people prefer Facebook, they could totally.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for coming on the show. This has been so incredible just to get to hear more about your story, your journey. And thanks for just sharing your heart today with everyone that's been listening.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was really fun and such an honor.
I had so much fun getting to catch up with Hannah, and I'm so glad that you were able to join us today. Her thoughts on grief were seriously healing for me in this season, and I hope that they touched you as well. You can find all the links, the show notes, and additional resources on our website, creativeimpactpodcast.com. Like I mentioned earlier in the episode, next week I'll be joined by Jeanna Vance, who we mentioned today in our conversation. I'm so excited for you to get to hear more from Jeanna and more about Open Sky Arts Collective and all that they have going on. Thank you so much again for listening to the Creative Impact Podcast. The music for the show is produced by Michael Cash. Share the show with a friend, check out our Patreon community, and I'll see you next week for my conversation with Jeanna Vance.